Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. This is Big Girl Diary. Okay, where do I begin with all of this stuff? Russell Brand. Oh my goodness, he's accused of sexual abuse, indecent abuse. Now, I didn't know abuse had some kind of decency about it, but that's just okay, here nor there. And and I don't know where to begin. I don't. So let's start with what he has to say.
Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're
Pay
very
attention.
fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, we're just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
Okay. Now that's what he said. Now, when he said that when he was young, he was a drug addict, a schmex addict, and an imbecile. Now, he's hanging around him. And he has done some wild, wild stuff. So that does lead, or should I say, lend credibility to what he said. However, Diddy, he has people suing him left and right based on the unconsensual part. Now, Russell Brand said that what he did was all consensual. And he said his day in court. And I think that right there is a good thing for him to prove his innocence. But we have to keep in mind, I believe that it's the same in UK. You're innocent until proven guilty. So the charges came out and So now he is going to have an opportunity to fight those charges and have an opportunity to clear his name. Okay. So he's denying all charges, all the things that he was accused of doing. So he denies those things. All right. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into what the police said. So Russell Brand's charged with grape juice and sexual assault of UK police. Now, this is going to be quite interesting. Okay, here, as I stated, what he was charged with. Now, the Metropolitan Police said in a statement that Russell Brand has been charged in connection with 5 offenses, including 4 women between 1999 and 2005. Now, that has been like what, 20 years, between 20 and 25 years. My thing is this: Russell has pissed off everyone. So, for this to take place to say, okay, these charges are coming now, right? So we could only suspect, or I shall say, I suspect this may have something to do with someone who he has offended. And again, who has he not offended? He offends everyone, especially corporations and people that, how can I say, uh, maybe I can't say going green or whatever, but he has been an activist for what is right, justice, truth. Okay. So you could only imagine why these charges are coming out now. Why are these ladies saying something now? Is it the Diddy effect? Is it what's happening over in the United States is now coming over to the UK? I don't know. But however, he has made a lot of enemies, no frenemies, but enemies. All right, so here, what else? Okay, and they include 1 count of grape juice, 1 count of indecent assault. And then, like I said earlier, who knew that assault was decent? 1 count of oral grape juice and 2 counts of assault. And he did say when he was young, he was a drug addict, and he has done some things. He was an imbecile. Again, he said everything what he did was consensual. Now, okay, let's go ahead and talk about the 90s. All right. The 90s was wild. And in the US, we had something called the Freaknik. And that was women who were extending their sexual revolution that occurred back in the 60s. Our mothers, we started that again in the 90s, and many are ashamed of what occurred back then, the types of freedom and liberties that women have done. And this also applies to the UK too. D- Done some really questionable things that you wouldn't even want your husband or children to know. You don't want to know that your mama was on some kind of car and twerking or doing whatever and did it in front of cameras. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that what the girls are bringing this out, maybe because there's they might, I don't know. I don't know. But I do have an issue, a big issue. One of the complainants was 16 years old. Now, I'm not sure what is the age of consent in the UK. I'm not quite sure. But my issue is not so much with Russell. My issue is with the parents. What were the parents allowing their child, their teenager, being with someone in their late 20s, possibly 30s, having whatever they were doing? Russell Brand, a comedian, an actor. I mean, just, oh my goodness, I got an actor. Yay. But we got to look at these parents, in my opinion. Take a look at them. Okay, thank you. In the UK, the legal age of consent for sexual activity is 16 years old. Okay, so 16 years old. To me, that's still too young. That's still too young, especially for somebody that's old. But I'll leave it right there. I'll leave it right there. Okay, let's get back to the article. Okay, in a video statement, which I just showed what Russell Brand said, and he said he did nothing wrong. He was a rug addict, an imbecile, and we understand that. So here it says a woman who alleged that she was raped in Bournemouth, England, in 1999. Now, my thing is this: in 1999, and she claims that she was grape juiced. Now, my thing is this: is there any police record? I'm just asking, because that right there's a violation. And if you or if she did not go to the police and put out a criminal report on him, and if she didn't, and she allowed him to continue on with that behavior unchecked, unfettered, that's an issue. But however, she's coming out now. Here, a woman who alleged that she was indecently assaulted in the Westminster area of London in 2001. Is there a criminal complaint? That's all I want to know. And I'm not saying I'm not for or against Russell Brand. I just want to know, do you have documentation backing it up? Because it's like 25, 30 years later. That's all that I'm saying. Here, a woman who alleged she was orally grape juiced and sexually assaulted in Westminster area of 2024. Is there a police report, a complaint? And a woman who alleged she was sexually assaulted in Westminster area in 2004 and 2005. So, okay. He did this twice. Twice. Not once, but twice. But Russell Brand, this is interesting. Just check this part out right here. Let me bring this up. Now here, Russell Brand and P. Diddy. Now, if you don't know what that egg means, that egg means has a meaning to it. And Russell holding that egg, that means you do anything. You do anything. And that anything means I don't even want to talk about the backside, okay? Just the backside. And I'll leave it right there.
Just gonna kind of become his bitch.
I don't want to be nobody's bitch. I've worked too hard in life. Not even Diddy's bitch. Diddy's new to me, right? He looked after me. He took me on an enforced holiday to Vegas. He's a very intense man. He went, could you pick me up from the airport? I've got back from holiday, or I'm going away. Would you feed my fish? And really he didn't want to feed his fish. Oh, how much fish food you put in? He'd still do it because you think, oh.
But but as you look right here, Russell Brand recalls a very intense Sean Diddy Combs taking him on a enforced holiday. You can't say no to him. So this only leads me to believe, what does he have on you, Russell? Yeah, he tapes everything, you and your egg. I'm just saying. But again, it goes back to, who did Russell piss off? Who did he piss off? Let's end with Russell's words.
Hello. Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support. We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon to be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK. How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. Me, I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a rapist. I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. I want to thank all of you for your continuing support.
You
I
know,
want to let
now
you
that
know.
I had an opportunity to listen to him talk again, some things popped into my mind. Before he said that he was an imbecile and he was a drug addict, before he said that, he was talking about crimes and how the justice system doesn't work and the corruption of government that has always happened. But I just found that quite interesting about that right there. Now, if by being a social justice person, why not use your platform to shed light on that? If people are losing their lives, why not shed light on that? But why say that and then say, oh, well, I was an idiot, I was a rug addict, and I was a schmex addict? It doesn't sit well with me. But that's just me. And I just find the P. Diddy thing and him saying he was intense. And the egg, I'm just so blown away with the egg. But at any rate, whatever what your thoughts are, whether if you support them or not, and I'm just simply giving the facts as they're out there. I'm not saying he did it. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but I am talking about that 16-year-old girl's parents. They need to be drug into a court of law. That's the only person I'm looking at. Them. However, on that note, I do want to thank you for stopping by.